We can start with just a short meditation just to kind of let our minds relax and settle a bit before we start the discussion. And if you have a go-to process that's comfortable for you, so if you're just going to be sitting for a few minutes, please you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, you can start by just feeling your body in your seat. Just noticing the sensation of the clothes touching your skin, weight of your body and on the seat. Noticing if we're holding ourselves in any tense way and trying to relax any tension we notice. And when you're ready, just bringing your attention to the sensation of the breath as it moves in and out. And you can place your awareness whatever is comfortable in the movement of the abdomen, sensations of the air coming in and out of the nose, to the nose, chest, wherever is a comfortable place to rest your attention. Maybe it's the whole process of the breath itself throughout your body. And just giving our minds permission to let go of thoughts and just simply be sitting, feeling the sensation of the breath. Not even necessarily trying to accomplish anything, just giving ourselves permission just to let go and just simply notice the breathing, feel it. And noticing that the sensations are fresh each breath. Feel like you can take a moment just to connect with a sense of intention, quality of intention for this question. If you're already kind of aspiring along the path, just reconnecting with that inspiration and aspiration. Recognizing the qualities of compassion and love for self and others, the world, in that inspiration and aspiration. If it's a sense of an ideal or a true sense of self or sense of our true nature, like we're wanting to connect with. We'll set an attention that this is kind of an expression or a step towards that process. A step towards fulfilling that. And if you have a feeling, a clear feeling of that intention, or you can just be with that intention, just hold it in the presence of mind. And allow it to strengthen on its own. As if we're coming to get to know it more, become more familiar with it. Great. So then we can go ahead and start. Or continue now that we've started.
I don't know if it's just me, Justin, but it sounds like you're talking underwater.
Oh no.
Yeah, same.
Is this any better? No.
Yeah, that sounded better to me.
I mean, testing, is it a little bit better or?
It sounds better to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, sorry about that. Was that just an unintelligible mumbling? Quiet mumbling? Okay. Oh, you're muted, Lou.
I got most of it, and it was a meditation, so
Okay.
you just ad lib between the spaces. That's all.
Okay. You made it your own. Sorry about that. Um, yeah, so how are we doing today? I thought, yeah, we kind of see where this goes. Last week we talked about maybe doing a meditation towards the end, second half of the class, kind of visualization, basic visualization practice of meditating on the Buddha. If people are interested, we can, or we can go somewhere else. Yeah, I guess just kind of have an open point here for any questions or interests. Supported there.
There's still some echo coming on your line now. Did anybody else notice it?
I noticed it getting worse.
That's what I thought.
Let me I'm gonna switch something. Let me adjust the computer real quick. Okay, I'm gonna go without the mic. How's that? A little better? That's better? Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, sometimes on this computer, Zoom's audio, it's been pretty stable lately, but for a while I was having a lot of problems with it just kind of switching quality for some reason. But yeah, I was going to, not sure what you caught, but yeah, last week we talked about maybe doing meditation at the second half of, maybe the last 20 minutes or so on the Buddha, just practicing a very simple visualization practice and what that's like, just kind of getting some kind of core elements of visualization practice in this tradition. But again, just kind of totally open. And then at this point, yeah, if anybody has any sort of interest or questions that's come up this past week, or you can kind of jump in from there.
I got one. When you're feeling whatever it is, some bad feelings, say anxiety, which is pretty common for a lot of people, is the problem like something that's happened, or is it just the way you're looking at things, or what you're making of it, or is it both, or is it always both?
Sergio, I can't. You're not muted, but I can't hear you.
Let's try it again. Nope.
So, no, I can't hear. Yeah, can you hear?
Yeah, I
You
can
can
hear
hear
you just
Sergio?
fine. Yeah.
I can hear him fine
Oh.
too.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. All right. I can hear you now. Wow. All right.
Yeah, feelings of anxiety. Is it like something comes up in life? Is it the way you look at it, or is it the issue that came up that's facing you? I mean, what causes it? Like I mean, I've heard different things about difficulty. It's how you've addressed things in life, and it comes back to roost, I guess. But I mean, there's things that are immediate, like something happens and you feel it right away, not as if it takes a while to come into being.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like how strong anxiety, we're talking kind of pretty strong feelings, or just kind of yeah. And typically, like a situation, like you're saying, a situational, like, or
Well,
some
it
people
seems
have
to be
anxiety as a baseline.
Well, there's always there's a baseline, but there's also like a spike. You could take a gander, like for myself, take a gander at what it is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I'm wondering how to solve the issue. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes yeah, so interesting coming back to this idea, the name of this program, being your own therapist. So I go to therapy, I see a therapist regularly in addition to my teacher practice. It's part of my kind of education program, but I'm really glad I'm doing it. And I had a moment with him where I was having some anxiety about, I don't remember exactly what it was. And so he kind of just asked, like, okay, so what would be, so what, okay, what are you, like, what am I afraid of happening? And then, okay, let's say it happens. So then, and it was such a, at least in that situation, it wasn't complex, but the anxiety was like in my, it was bothering me. But it was just like I didn't spend that 1 minute asking, like, okay, so what am I worried about? Okay, so let's say it happens. Okay, what, and it was like, what's the likelihood of that actually happening? Because sometimes it's just like obviously not gonna, it's like, well, like, I guess it could happen, but it's probably not going to happen. So there's that as component to it. And then, okay, let's say it does. And then just like my inner, kind of intelligence is kind of came out. I was like, well, I guess, that could be something, but it wasn't like, it made it workable. And it was just such a simple thing. And we just kind of laughed. I was like, I'm paying you. How much am I paying you?
It's almost like you're feeling it before it actually happens.
Yeah, it's just, so anxiety is kind of, it's like a tree branch of fear, like the root emotion of anxiety is, is fear. So there's some fear of something. So on one level, it could be like, okay, what am I worried or afraid of happening? And just playing out the scenario, basically. Because sometimes it's like the anticipation of something is infinitely worse than when it actually happens. Like it actually happens, and then we're just like, okay, it's here. Something inside of us just naturally responds like, well, it's happening. So then I got to make my next move. And sometimes I think with anxiety, not all, but in situational kind of anxiety, there's like different, look at different angles. But sometimes it's just just spending some time asking the question and then answering the question and seeing, and it was, I just couldn't believe how it's like, and he didn't even, like saying that, like I answered it for myself and it was just like over. And so sometimes it's the kind of the peskiness of anxiety. It's the emotion itself blocks us from just taking 5-10 minutes of quiet time and maybe journaling or meditating and kind of asking, and part of it's, I guess, because it's a fear, fear tends to prevent us, like if I'm afraid of going through that door, I'm not going to go through the door, but then, so I don't actually get to see what's there and how I would respond, kind of thing. But yeah, so there can be that kind of level. It's like, can we actually sit down and just give ourselves the attention to see what we're actually worried about, and listen to that worry, and then using some scouting and to check what we know about the worry, about the situation, and see. So there can be that level. Yeah, and then if we don't know, if it's not clear, then sometimes it's just going into the body and allowing the kind of rational mind, that the rational mind isn't catching it or working it out. And sometimes just going into the feeling, whatever it feels like. So often for me, anxiety, I get it, I feel it in my chest. There's this kind of like this, and if one way of working with that technique of not trying to get, not using the rational process is when you check in with the body using descriptors that aren't like, using them at very, very tactile, like, okay, I feel this kind of, it's like cool, it's tense, it feel, like a texture, like what is the texture of it, what's the temperature of it, what's the color of, certain kind of right brain kind of style things, and just be with that and maybe ask, see what's there. And sometimes actually the message will come out of there. It's quite going again back to therapy experience, like, yeah, sometimes like I'll just help myself stay in that felt process in the body. Like sometimes maybe I'll hold my chest and just kind of feel it, or just hold my attention, my awareness, and allow that just to be there, and then just to see what kind of comes out. And sometimes the answer will come out, or sometimes you actually just process the anxiety on a kind of energetic level, and it will just resolve that way without a kind of rational story. So it can be just too.
When you say it comes out, does it come out as an intuitive feeling? How does it express itself?
A feeling, or maybe something like some words will come out. It could be an image, or like maybe like something will come out. It's like, oh, okay, that's fear. That's okay, and then just stay with that. Okay, it's fear, and then just kind of seeing how it unfolds. And maybe there will be kind of like sometimes just allowing, like, okay, my first genuine response, like first thought, best thought, is a kind of a phrase coined by a Tibetan teacher. It's like, oh, that just, okay, I just had this kind of phrase, and that if that feels like, okay, that might be related, just kind of, hang out with that and see if that can be, something giving you some information about it. And then again, yeah, sometimes you don't need to even, it doesn't have to make any rational sense. You could just be with the felt level of it, the energetic level of it, and allow it just to kind of, you just get to, it's just like spending time with it, babysitting it or whatever, until it's does what it does. And sometimes it'll just kind of move through, which can then be it can be an interesting kind of experience to, in the Buddhist tradition, we talk about the impermanence. Emotions are impermanent. None of them, they might feel fixated for quite a while, or get stagnated in us, or recur in us very often, but they're not permanent. There is an end to all emotion, positive or difficult. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting experience. Yeah, and then if there's like a baseline anxiety that we live with, we're kind of like, I'm a this type person, I'm an anxious person, I'm an angry person, I'm a whatever. And that can be more complex. That can be like more of a long-term journey with, working with a meditation teacher or working with a therapist. Maybe it could be a diet kind of environmental thing with how your body is working with where you live, things like that. Yeah, so that could maybe be more of a long-term, more holistic project if that's kind of our style. But even then, those kind of experiences, if it's not like a situational kind of narrative that we have to kind of listen to or play, work out, getting to befriend anxiety in its felt form and starting to create space with it instead of battling with it or trying to distract from it or even seeing it as necessarily a problem, but seeing it as some sort of, for some reason, a companion of ours. Slowly we can kind of work through it. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Susan, you had a question?
No, I don't have a question.
Yeah, in this tradition, they talk about just kind of identifying what's your biggest emotion, like what's your most frequent recurring emotion, and starting, kind of, and putting your focus on that one. So if anxiety is our primary one, or frustrations are one, or whatever, kind of spending time with that relating to that emotion. And so we can kind of look at it from different angles. Some ways we can see how it's impacting us. So asking the question, like, how is this emotion, recurring emotion, impacting our lives? So oftentimes they're, causing some chaos or causing some limitations, maybe. I like one way I've heard it describes like a style of, like our own personal style of imprisonment, like that emotion kind of, it's kind of our particular style of how we get caught or imprisoned, limited. So giving us some reflecting on how it's impacting us can kind of, that starts to develop that sense of self-compassion and a wish to move on from it. Like, okay, I want to be liberated from it or be free of it. Yeah, and another interesting way of looking at it too is like usually that emotion at some point was maybe a protective strategy. So it might have helped us, protected us in some way from something earlier that we had a hard time with. So like with anxiety is a protective response. I'm worried about something. So, my danger senses are activated, and then I'm, kind of wanting to protect myself from that perceived danger. Or anger, with anger, usually anger is a secondary response from some sort of vulnerability that got touched. And it's kind of an armoring or a protective kind of quality. Jealousy, with jealousy, we can see there's a vulnerability there too, maybe some sort of sense of self that's painful, that's being activated and kind of mirrored or reflected back in the object of our jealousy. So again, the jealousy is a secondary response to a vulnerability in us. And that can give us some very valuable information too. Like, this is how this is how I'm protecting myself. And in a way we can see like, oh, that's not necessarily a bad, like there's some sense of love and compassion in that protective response. I'm trying to, I'm just trying to make it through, or, something in me was hurt at some points, and then, I just developed this kind of strategy or whatever for some reason that's kind of there. And okay, it did this protection, or it worked in this protective way, but at the same time it's imprisoning me and impacting my life and kind of holding me back, or it's causing all these side effects. And so there's a wish to be free from it. And seeing the protective strategy, I think for me it helps not get into all-out war kind of thing, or just like some sort of like creating, like I'm irritated that it's present, like seen as like, oh, it's arising, in a way because of this. It's less irritating. Like I see, okay, it's just this is what it's doing, or this is why it arose. So I don't get as frustrated that it's not gone yet. It gives some level of compassion and some insight in its kind of conditioned nature to it. So, yeah.
Justin, can you give an example?
Yeah. Any particular emotion or?
Always anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll use one. So I like, it's gone down now, but like in my Zoom classes, when there's a lot of people, I get kind of anxious in speaking. So I'm anxious to speak in a big group. I'm worried about something. What am I worried about? Maybe I'm going to say something stupid or wrong, or people aren't going to like me, or I'm going to feel embarrassed. And usually that's what it is. It's some gut, unrefined, kind of, very young, kind of, worry. So the anxiety, the fear or whatever. So what I'll do is I won't speak. And that's my protective, I feel anxiety and I'll protect myself by not speaking. I won't show up and won't speak. Even if I want to speak. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's, especially if I genuinely, honestly want to say something, but I don't, I'm holding it, and that holding takes a lot of energy. And that holding, if I'm holding for years, then it becomes a lack of it, it can become kind of this thing. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm worried about these things happening. So like maybe I was, of course I was embarrassed when I was maybe, I don't know what the developmental point in my life, or many developmental, whenever it develops, but so is my worries. And the way it impacts me is that it makes being in the groups very exhausting, because the anxiety is uncomfortable, and then the holding back is uncomfortable, and then like the guilt of like, oh, not speaking up, hiding, not being genuine, that's all this stuff that's just like, it's hard to hold, so it's impacted me from connecting.
What was it protecting you from? Getting the feeling?
Embarrassment, humiliation, which could be some sense of, protecting me from feeling humiliated, protecting me from feeling, I don't want to feel shame. I don't want to feel,
so it makes you draw back.
Right. Gotcha. I don't want to feel I'll be at a risk of feeling something. I don't want to feel that feeling that might happen. So then I'm going to draw back. right? So I'm protecting myself in this way. Okay, how is it impacting my life? Like I said, makes it stressful. It also keeps me from genuinely connecting with others because I'm not expressing myself. I'm not participating. I'm not offering myself. I'm holding back myself. There's a sense of disingenuousness in that too. So that, it also has a kind of impact. So it might be keeping me safe from these possible humiliations, but it's also keeping me back from being free to express and connect and be with people. So starting to come to terms with how it's impacting. And then also that kind of narrative, okay, like, so what if I do get humiliated? Okay, what if I say something stupid, like stupid or wrong or whatever? What if all the class members laugh at me or whatever? So you can kind of like, okay, is embarrassment going to kill me? What does embarrassment feel like? So it can be like you can kind of play with it, like, okay, I'm afraid of feeling embarrassed. Okay, let's feel embarrassed. Like, go maybe spend time in a meditation. Like, what does embarrassment feel like? And then bring it up in a controlled environment, like by yourself, and feel embarrassed. Like, you can bring I'm sure we have, I have plenty of those moments or whatever. So I bring that up and I can feel it. And it's like, oh, it didn't kill me. Oh, embarrassment feels like that. I feel it in my stomach. It feels like butterflies or whatever. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, it's a sensation. Is it who I am? No. It's just an emotion. But, okay, yeah, I know what embarrassment is. It's not that bad. And so then what happens is that this wisdom dawns of like, oh, in like Western psychology, that's almost like a exposure therapy. You expose yourself in a controlled way to what you're afraid of. And, they would say like, that way now you're starting to rewire your neurobiology to, instead of going in a fear response towards it, you can actually kind of meet it or go through, and it won't activate you. So the threat of embarrassment won't feel as a threat. It won't be a threat anymore because you've lived through it and there's no danger in it. And you realize, and another thing with when strong emotion arises, there's a sense of identifying with it. So I am, that language of I am embarrassed versus I feel embarrassed, or there's a feeling of embarrassment, there's a feeling of this, and not having that sense of self. And the Buddhist path of kind of complete liberation, we're kind of working with like how our identity is wrapped up in our experience in a way that's not true. So there can be some stuff there too. And then with anger too. I never forget, I saw a traffic accident in Denver one time. I didn't see the actual accident, but it wasn't major. But it was it was a good one, but nobody was hurt. And one person got out of the car, and there was a moment of just kind of shock and bewildered and kind of like, and then she got so angry. Like there was no anger, it was just kind of this vulnerable space. And then it's like she recognized like the vulnerability, and then it was just like rage instantly. So with anger types, again, looking at the impacts of anger, how it's playing out in our lives, how it's limiting us, how it might be harming people around us, how it's harming us, all the different impacts of stress, different things, how it's destructive, and then how is it, what is it, what's its protective kind of function. And then, but there's levels to, social anxieties one thing, but there can be some deep, when we work with our emotions, some of these fears or kind of vulnerabilities can be quite strong. So having a sense of working with them in a graded way, so we don't overwhelm, especially if we have some intense life experiences in the past or emotional, we want to have some care around those, and allow it to be kind of, maybe we do need supports with maybe another therapist or our meditation instructor, what's our situation. But I think that's not the case. Yeah, we have a lot we can work with in terms of that kind of familiarity. Again, like what's our dominant one? What's the one that's our closest companion, the one that's showing up all the time, the most frequently? And then, impacts, its protective qualities. Also looking at how one way, if it's constantly happening, in what context is it happening? So we talk about kind of, removing the activators. So if something's kind of some person or condition or context is really activating something that we have some choice in, whether we engage it or not, we can step back from it to get some space from it. It's like, instead of, so removing ourselves from the act, what gets us going for a while we work on some of our controlled kind of processing with it, practicing with it can also be helpful. So for, maybe for angry types, maybe media consumption, there can be a kind of way of that, just kind of constantly stimulating something that's just upsetting us. And, is there value in it? And, even if there is, like, do I need to take a little break? Finding some practical ways. So we're not constantly overwhelming our system while we do some of our inner work in a protected way.
So if it's a little harder, if you can't remove yourself from it, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And then, so if we can remove ourselves from it, obviously it's harder. So maybe we need to find supports with it. So, we have our protected inner work with it. It could be through a meditation, could be journaling, could be with the therapist, possibly. Then you can also work with, the tradition talks about kind of counterbalancing. So kind of the opposite forces. So with anger, the opposite force of anger is love. So we can do some practices of loving kindness. Anxiety. Maybe not the opposite of anxiety. I'd say maybe impermanence, equanimity, meditation. It's more of a modern term. Fear and attachment family. So usually in the kind of fixation, it's kind of in the fixation or attachment. With fixation, we talk about change and permanence. equanimity of outcome. So if we can work with some of those the fears and just lay out the fears without judging them, like what are my gut fears about this? What are my gut worries? And don't judge them, just let them out. Give them some space and light, and then developing some equanimity towards those. But yeah, with fixation, generally the kind of oppositional force would be impermanence, change. If we can kind of connect with that. Jealousy would be kind of delighting or rejoicing or appreciating, feeling gratitude for others' well-being and success. So even if there's somebody who drives us crazy with jealousy, maybe if we can't rejoice for their goodness, like don't fool ourselves. Like I'm trying, I'm good. I'm so happy for them, but I'm actually like, really, yes, I'm so happy that if we can't use them as somebody to rejoice with, we can do it with other people, other people that we don't have that kind of tension with. So the point is to actually familiarize ourselves with the energy of that positive emotion. Same with, somebody who's frustrating with us, if we can't wish them well, if it's just too tense for us, find people that we have a very easy kind of flow with, that we can generate the strength of that energy. So the point is just getting the strength of loving kindness. It's not the point of necessarily accomplishing and loving all beings instantly, or feeling, feeling like Jesus instantly, that everybody's equal.
So working up to
like
it,
that.
really.
What's that?
So you're working up to it.
Yeah. So it's good. Yeah. So it's like, it's small, it's just trying out using easy objects to generate that emotion. Easy channels, easy ways to do it, just to build it up. It's almost like building up a storehouse, kind of a storage of good energy, good positive emotion. And usually what the tradition will say, you start with something easy, then you can kind of build it up and you familiarize what the feeling itself is. And then sometimes it's almost like, it's like, oh yeah, and you too, even you too. Like once you start feeling good enough, like, oh yeah, even you too, or you see like, oh yeah, no, now you have the perspective of love already strength in you, and you see the reality that's actually more in line with reality. If the person or object's not too difficult, maybe we can have some breakthrough with them. So we build it up and then use that kind of power and familiarity to eventually have a breakthrough with those that are very difficult when we're ready. And again, it's just knowing our limits. Because it's interesting, like from a Buddhist point of view, the positive emotions are actually in line with the nature of reality, and the nature of interconnectedness and how we actually exist. And the destructive emotions are exaggerations, narrowing, loss of perspective, very kind of reactionary, kind of forceful, kind of things that aren't in line with the way things exist. So if we can generate the positive emotions in ourselves, it starts to lead us towards this kind of accurate experience of reality. So in that way, the positive emotions are actually supportive of not just emotional healing and emotional well-being, but this kind of deeper kind of created kind of insight towards how things exist. It's kind of deeper in nature, or fuller nature. Maybe unless anybody have any questions or comments? Is there anything you want to try? Yeah, let's just let's combine. Do people have 15 minutes, or do we have to go? People have to go hard at 5.
Do 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes. Okay. Maybe we'll combine what we were just talking about with also the visualization Buddha practice. It'll be short, but I think it can be. So we'll just settle for a moment, and then what we'll do is bring this kind of presence image of the Buddha in the space. And as mentioned last week, we'll go through the visual detail, the kind of visual detail, the appearing details, but really the most important thing is to connect with the sense of the Buddha's presence in your space. So how you understand an awakened being in your space. And then with that presence, we'll kind of bring the mind and the emotion that we're working with and kind of go through a little bit what we're talking about. Just short taste. Yeah, so maybe we can start with a few deep breaths if you like. One technique is to breathe in deeply through your nose, taking a full breath, and holding the breath for a moment or two, and then exhaling slowly through your mouth as if you're blowing through a fine straw. I'm doing this a few times, just kind of mindfully allow the system to settle. And just letting the thoughts just kind of fall away and come into a feeling of the breath, awareness of the feeling of the breath. And then if you like, imagine in the space of awareness in front of you, at the level of the forehead, your feet in front of you. There appears a lotus flower. And a petaled white lotus. And on top of the lotus is a disc of sunlight lying flat. And on top of the sun disc is a disc of moonlight lying flat. And on top of these appears the Buddha, Shakyamuni, seated in the full lotus posture. This body is in the nature of light and radiant gold color. He's wearing saffron robes of monk. His left hand's resting in his lap with a begging bowl filled with nectar, expressing the peaceful, quantumous nature of mind. And his right hand rests over his right knee in a gesture of touching earth, expressing its inner confidence in its true nature. Buddha smiles with narrow, compassionate eyes. He's radiating this warm, powerful, loving, accepted wisdom presence. And it's a sense of an unconditional acceptance and radiance. Buddha's presence is offering this kind of unconditional, radiant acceptance as we work with an emotion that is challenging for us. Just sit here for a minute quietly, just resting in that sense of unconditional acceptance and radiance. And if you can, having a felt image of a Buddha in space before you. And if you feel comfortable, you want to bring to mind emotion that is difficult for you, challenging for you, but not too intense. Something you want to contemplate for a few moments. Within this space of the Buddha's unconditional radiance and acceptance. Frustration, anxiety, whatever emotion. And then without judging, if we can, just acknowledging how it's impacting us. And trying to have a sense of, from a place of compassion for ourselves, And I feel like maybe also acknowledging that it's been serving to kind of protect us in some way. And if we can, honoring that wish to protect and care for ourselves. Even if the means by which it's happening isn't necessarily most skillful or helpful. Just honoring that wish to protect, care. And you can imagine from the Buddha's heart, seeing our sense of compassion and resolve in ourselves. This golden, warm, loving, unconditional light radiates from the Buddha's heart. And it enters through the crown of our head and just descends and completely envelops us. Giving us strength and support in our journey as we work with this emotion. Just feeling the golden light kind of flow through us and fill every cell in our body. Awakening our own inner courage, resolve, and any qualities we need to support in our journey, in our practice. And you can imagine the Buddha comes to abide above the crown of our heads, facing the same direction as us. And then becoming smaller, the Buddha descends down, come rest at the center of our heart space. A sense of unification, oneness with the Buddha's qualities and our own inner Buddha nature, our own inner qualities. And just rest quietly in this feeling. And we can dedicate whatever positive potential we may have generated in our practice and discussion together today. May it become a cause and a seed to awaken our own full inner potential, so that we can be of lasting value to all living beings without exception. So enable to awaken their inner potential, full potential. Any personal dedication you like to make quietly. Okay, thank you so much.